Hey, I'm Mark Coyne, played for the Dragons for many years, 12 years, played a few games for Queenslander, State of Origin, and also got to represent my country as well.
Mark, welcome to From Then to Now. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Dean. Thanks, mate. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, it's a pleasure, mate. And like I said, I'm a lifelong Dragons fan, so I might fanboy out a bit in this, but hopefully we keep it a little bit professional. But mate, let's throw it back to the beginning. A kid from Sunnybank, Queensland. How'd you end up in rugby league?
Yeah, I'm the youngest of four. I've got a sister and two older brothers, and my two older brothers were big rugby league players. We played for the local team at Sunnybank Magpies, and I just followed in their footsteps, I suppose. And then just sort of worked my way through playing at the Magpies, and eventually one of my really good mates I went to school with got a contract over at Brothers, which was one of the senior clubs in the Brisbane comp, and I followed him over there to play under-19s, and had a couple of years there, and then managed to crack first grade in 1987. And that was a year that we actually went through and won the grand final. We beat Redcliffe up there, and that was the Winfield Cup. It was before the Broncos came into the competition, so it was a really good competition back then. And and then at some point the Dragons had a look at me, and I ended up down in Sydney.
How did you go from being in Queensland right in the Brisbane Broncos as they were coming in? How did you end up in Dragons territory instead?
Yeah, it was sort of weird because the Dragons sent up a few scout, a guy called John Jansen, who was an old player with the Dragons, and he went up to look at some other players. So there's a guy called Clinton Moore, Trevor Bailey, Peter Gill, and Steve Carter. They're all established first graders in the Brothers team, and I think they sort of saw me just on the side, and thought he might be worth having a go at as well. So pretty much five of us got contracted to come down and play at Brothers, play at St George. And basically that year in '87, when the Broncos came in '88, Brothers just about lost all of their first grade team. We won the grand final that year, and the next year there was no players left because we all got picked up to go to different clubs in the Sydney comp. So it was sort of a sad time because Brothers broke up, but it was obviously good for a lot of us individually to come down and play in what was considered the best comp.
Yeah. And your brother Peter, he also got signed with the Dragons. So going from playing backyard footy to playing footy with your brother, how was that?
Yeah, it was great. Peter, I was always, he was my idol when I sort of watched him play. He was, a super player in terms of reading of the game. He had a great kicking game and just a smart player. And he didn't get down until a bit later. I came down early. I came down in '88, and I think Pete came down for the 91, halfway through 91, when we had a couple of injuries. We lost Jason Elchin and David New, and they brought Pete down from Valleys in Brisbane, and he came down and had an instant hit for us in 91, and then 92 he played a key part in getting us to the grand final.
An early part of your career influence was Brian Smith. Now, got another coach about to join the 600 club in Craig Bellamy, but one of the less than a handful of people have done it, and one of those is Brian Smith. How big of an influence was he on your career early on? Yeah,
he was massive influence for me, Brian. He got me pretty young. He thought I was a winger to start with, and I said, well, I'm going to prove you wrong, because I didn't really like being called a winger. All my mates know that. But I said, I think I'm more of a centre, Brian. He said, well, you got to prove that to me. And to his credit, after about 4 games on the wing, he put me in the centres, and I stayed there. But Brian was very good in terms of developing his skills. Like, he was very good around just practice catching and passing and all that sort of stuff. A lot of basic drills, and also super smart in terms of strategy around games, Brian. And he brought a guy in called Max Ninnis. People don't talk about Max very much, but he was a real rock around strategy, game strategy for Brian, and gave Brian a lot of support. And I think a lot of us that played under Brian recognised how good Max Ninnis was as a strategist. Brian. I always look back and say Brian was by far the guy that made me a better player for sure.
Those early '90s, some big teams in the Raiders and the Broncos, and you faced off against the Broncos in '92 and '93 grand finals. Some big players in those teams. You have any memories of playing against some of those big names?
Oh yeah, like I used to not like marking up against Mal Meninga. That was never the dream to line up against Mal, particularly when there's a scrum set, when you're sort of marking directly up 1-on-1 with Mal. But Mal was an idol of mine when I was young, so it was obviously a bit of a thrill to be out there competing with him. But he was quite the force, and I've got plenty of memories, in terms of Alfie Langer and Kevin Walters. Like I played a lot of State of Origin games with them. We really clicked well, got on really well as friends, Alf and Kevy, but they used to terrorise me forever. After, even in games, in grand finals, after they'd hammer me all the time, and they're characters, but they gave me a hard time.
Any truth to the rumour that they showed you how to do a victory lap at Origin train?
Yes, we're at Origin training. It might have even been in '94 when we were sitting down after training, and we were sort of stretching down and just having a bit of a laugh and having some water, and next minute, Alf and Kevy yelling at me. I wasn't paying attention. I looked up, and they were running around the oval doing the victory lap. Just going to show you how to do a victory lap, Coyne. So yeah, they did that. They're really funny and unique guys. Those two guys. And another really funny story with Kevy and Alf is we were playing a game, the State of Origin game up in Brisbane. I think it was in 1992, and it was a pretty wet weather game. And all week, Alf and Kevy always tried to do these practical jokes on you, and they've been trying to get me for ages, but they never got me all camp. And on the way to the game, on the bus, I said, you guys tried to get me all week, you never got me, sucked in. Anyway, so I'm playing this game, and it was a wet game, and it was 4-4 with about probably 5 minutes to go. And somehow Alf's managed to miracle up a field goal, so he's kicked a field goal, so it's 5-4, and there's about 3 minutes to go. So I'm thinking all we've got to do now is catch the ball from the kickoff, we hold the ball for 6 tackles, and we win the game. So that's in my head. And New South Wales did the short kickoff. Thankfully, one of our guys caught it, so we've got the ball. I'm going, you beauty, 6 tackles, we're going to win the game. And so we're going through the tackles, and about 4th tackle, Alf and Kevy start screaming at me, I'm going to do a chip kick. I'm going, what? And they're going, you got to chase. I'm going, what the F? Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm going mental trying to run in and out. What are you saying? What are you saying? Because the crowd's going ballistic. And finally, we hold the ball for 6 tackles and we win the game. And I went up to them and said, what the hell was that about? And they said, we gotcha. So they're playing a practical joke on me with 1 minute to go, winning by 1.54 at the end of the game. But that was a really, in a way, that was a good lesson for me because it just sort of really highlighted that. Yes, it's a game and we all take it really seriously, but it's not life and death, is it? Like no. It's just a game of footy, and those guys just broke it down, and they always had fun. Kevy and Alf, whenever you were around, they just had the best fun. And to me, it was a bit of a lesson around, obviously you want to perform well, but don't take it all too seriously. Like at the end of the day, it's just a game of footy.
Did you ever get them back for that, or?
Oh, I couldn't. No, I can't get them back because even now, like Alf will ring me if they beat St George. I'll get a 1:30 a.m. phone call from Alf. I never answer it because I know who's going to ring me, and he'll be singing "Saints Can't Play." Oh. So that's what he does. So and what do? You just laugh. But he's a terrific guy, Alf, and Kevy's a great guy. I had good relationships with those guys, and obviously hated losing to them. But
I can imagine while he's making that phone call, he's wearing that Powers.
Oh, probably.
Yeah, the beanie thing, but...
Probably. But no, they're unique guys, and I'm really, really good mates with those two guys. And that was sort of one of the nice things about playing Origin footy. You sort of get to know people from other teams, and I got on really well with those two guys.
Another guy you mentioned marking up against was a tough job, Mal Meninga, yeah. But then you played with him as well.
Yeah.
How was that dynamic, like, facing up against him one week and playing with him the next?
Yeah, obviously pretty cool as well because, as I said, I was a young kid growing up in Brisbane, and, Mal was an idol because I obviously, loved Origin, and to play against him was a pretty big thrill, and then obviously to play with him in putting on the Maroon jersey was really special to me. And, Mal and I have a really, really strong friendship. I did a little bit of work for Mal when he's coached the Queensland team during that 12-year period, and I was very lucky to get to play a part in all that. So yeah, and I'm just got nothing but admiration for Mal. And I don't know, the other day I was just looking through some of his statistics for some weird reason, and what he's accomplished in the game is just mind-blowing. Like as a player and as a coach, there would be no one who's achieved as much as Mal Meninga. Yeah. He's well and truly like a legend of the game.
Yeah. We'll stay on Origin while we're there. The very next year, we're talking about 94, 95, Fatties Neville's.
Yeah.
And I suppose you're one of the more experienced guys in that squad. How is that going from being, I suppose, a younger guy where they would, not making fun of you, but mucking around with you, to now being one of the leaders of the squad?
It was obviously a bit different to when I started because I was in a different role, and obviously a lot of the players weren't allowed to get picked because of the Super League war. So yeah, you were right. We had, a few senior guys like me had played, probably 6 or 7 games. Then we had a heap of young kids like Ben Eichen, who I think he'd only played like 2 games for the Gold Coast or something even. But
Fatty didn't even know him in the elevator.
Fatty didn't even know him in the elevator, Benny. I got him as a roommate, Benny, so he was a good roomie. I don't know, just Fatty was just pretty amazing. He came into that very first meeting that we had and just talked about, what he wanted to do. He had Chris Close there, who gave a really emotional speech. He couldn't actually finish his speech. He was in tears. So I think just from that very moment that Fatty talked about, what Origin meant to him and what he wanted to see us do, it just gelled really well, and we just trained really hard. And the one thing that stands out to me from that series is Fatty made us defend our line. So at the end of each training session, we'd spend probably another 10 minutes practicing defending our line. And when it came to the games, it's probably don't remember, but we saved so many tries in that series, just right on our line. Like New South Wales were pressing and pushing, and they just couldn't get the ball down. And I reckon it came because Fatty got us to practice that our line is just so important that us defend it really well. And I reckon that made a big difference. And when we won the first game 2-0, I think the first game was down here in Sydney, 2-0, it just gave us that confidence that, hey, we can actually go with these guys. We can match it with them. And then obviously went down to Melbourne and won the series down there. And then to come back, in front of a packed, Suncorp Stadium was just an amazing experience. And unfortunately, during my Origin career, I only won that one series. I lost all the other series, so I didn't have a great record. But that '95 one was just something that was just so special. Very
rare to find a Queenslander now that doesn't, hasn't had that much success in Origin after all their success over the last 20 years. But still an amazing career in Origin. You brushed over game 2 like it was like nothing, but there's a few moments in there. I'll ask firstly about the brawl in the early stages of that game. I would have ran the other end of the field, but where were you in that?
I was I think dancing with Terry Hill. I think so. Yep. I think me and Terry just grabbed each other, and we didn't. Actually, no, it wasn't Terry. It was Paul McGregor. Me and Paul McGregor grabbed each other. Then we ended up playing together, obviously down the track with the joint venture in '99. But Mary and I always sort of got on reasonably well. We always had good battles against each other because we marked up against each other in the normal games. But no, me and Mary just grabbed each other, and we're not. We can't throw punches, Mary and I. So we just did a bit of a dance.
A little bit, and
yeah. We could have done what Matt Singh did. Matt Singh just threw haymakers. He didn't hit anyone. But it was funny because we did hear that the Blues were going to call cattle dog or something like that, or as soon as we said the word Queenslander, they were going to explode. So we were all ready for it, and obviously it happened, and it was great theatre. But I don't think anyone sort of got knocked around too much.
Fatty pointed out that the guys the New South Wales blokes were going to say cattle dog pretty early. He said he was going to bash anyone that said Queenslander, and one of your teammates, Wayne Bartram, actually was caught on camera saying Queenslander, a bit like that, as Fatty said. But any talk? Did you hear that call at all? Or?
Yeah, I heard the call, and obviously the scrum erupted. I can imagine Bardo doing that. Bardo was he was a bit of a niggler, Bardo, in terms of the way that he played the game, and I'm sure that a lot of players didn't like playing against Wayne. Fantastic play, by the way. But I think he would have definitely got his high voice happening, Bardo. But it's all good theatre, isn't it? Like as I
still
said,
gets shown in highlights packages to promote the game. So
I don't think anyone really hit anyone, to tell you the truth. But it made good entertainment, theatre, and and obviously we went on and won that series, so it was pretty cool.
And so one of the other moments you brushed over in '94 was the miracle try. You said you used to get asked about it 4 times a week. How often do you still get asked about it?
Still get asked a lot about it. Yeah, it's obviously something that just people remember it. Still people say generally people tell me where they were when I scored that try. They might have been at a pub, going for Queensland, but it was in New South Wales, and how much fun they had. And then other people, say, I thought we'd had the game won, and then you bloody scored that try. So it's really interesting. People tell me where they were there. But yeah, obviously it's a a great memory. Mel was great to give me the ball and give me the opportunity to get over, and yeah, it's just one of those iconic things. And it wasn't, I had the easy bit to do really. I just had to fall over the line at the end. But yeah, great team try, and I'm probably lucky given I scored on the one that gets all the accolades.
With your try, does anyone ever mention that you only played for about 7 minutes in that game?
No one ever thinks that. I've got to remind people to say I only played 7 minutes in that game. And it was sort of a weird night because after the game, I got absolutely mobbed by the journos after the game. And because I only played 7 minutes, you sort of feel like you hadn't contributed a lot. That was always how I felt. If I didn't play a full game, you sort of feel like you haven't had a big dig. So that night after the game, all the boys went out to celebrate, but I actually went home pretty early that night. I had my wife with me, and we drove home. I got stopped on the way home by police to do a random breath test of all things. I only had like half a can of beer, I think, after the game, and then I left. And I remember the policeman saying, "Well, have you had much to drink tonight?" And I said, "No, not really." I said, "Half a beer." He said, "Where you been?" I said, "I've just been at the State of Origin game." He said, "Oh yeah, I saw that we lost." And I said, "Yeah, that's how it goes." And but had he known that I actually had scored that try, he might have arrested me, I reckon. So I got away with that. He might have bumped it up. But yeah, so I had a really quiet night that night again because I hadn't played the full game, and I was a bit overawed by all of the attention from everybody. So a nice quiet night. But then obviously over the years, it's still something that people talk a lot about, and I'm absolutely happy to talk to people about it because it's obviously a real highlight of my career, and yeah, you said very fortunate to be the one that finished off that great team try.
The one series win that you had in '95 with Fatty's Neville's again, wrapped up in 2 games. You had the third game which you won the series 3-0. But any stories from that series?
The only one I can probably tell is after we won the game in Melbourne, we won that series, and I think New South Wales were pretty embarrassed by that loss, given we were the Neville nobodies, like literally. I remember being out at a nightclub that night after the game, and I ended up running into Timmy Brasher, and we had a bit of an altercation around that. So I think he was pretty shitty that we'd won, and I think he claims I bumped into him, and I'm claiming that he bumped into me, but he's probably right. It's probably me bumping into him. Yeah, so he grabbed me by the throat that night, and that was a bit of a shock to me. But the end of the year, we ended up going on the Kangaroo Tour together and became great mates. We catch up with each other now every now and again when we get the opportunity. So we sort of, where it started as a bit of a F you, F me, we've actually become pretty good mates out of it over the years. So yeah.
Pretty iconic jersey that year too, the '95. What about your Origin jerseys? You still have a fair few of them, or?
I got a few. Probably not. I played 19 games. I reckon I probably got 5 left. I think my kids. I got 3 kids. I think they've got one each, and I've given a fair few away to charities because otherwise the ones I've still got, even my old Dragons ones, they're sitting in a cupboard downstairs in mothballs, and I obviously don't wear them. I don't wear them out. But I've just got them there, and I'm just sitting there. I don't really think about them all that much, to tell you the truth. So.
Made your debut in Origin 1990, but then you didn't play for a couple more years. Yeah. Was there a thought like, you could have been sort of a couple of games and done, or? Yeah,
pretty much, because I played in the 99. It was really weird how I got my start. So in 1990 was when I made my debut for Queensland, but I was 18th man. So Wally Lewis had a hamstring strain. So I got brought into camp in case Wally was not going to play the game. So I watched Wally run up and down the hallway. That's how they did the fitness test back in the day. And he failed the fitness test, so then I got put in to the 17. And I was a bit overawed because I loved Wally. He was like my hero. Growing up, he was everyone's hero in Queensland, Wally. So I got to take his role. So I played game 1, which we lost down here. Again, I was just off the bench and didn't get much time. And then in game 2 was down in Melbourne, and I came on. And unfortunately, I threw an intercept pass to Brad Mackay, who scored a try, and then I got dropped for game 3. So got dropped for the third game in that series, and then I didn't get picked in 91 at all. And I thought, well, that's the end of my Origin career. I threw that intercept pass, and I'm never going to get back in the team again. And then, obviously I just worried about how I was playing at the Dragons, and I had a obviously pretty good year in '92 and '93, and made my way back into the team. At one point, but I thought I was gone. I thought I'd had my 2 games and I'll never get back in there again. But thankfully, I got back in. I got to 19 games. It would have been nice to get that 3rd game, because you get the 20 games, you get a special medal. You get the Dick Tosser Turner medal. But I just fell a little bit short, so that's how it goes. But
Come back on the cards, or
what's that?
come back on the cards, or
no, I'll be coming back on the cards.
Mate, David in '90 against underneath Artie Beetson, one of the Queensland legend.
Yeah.
You played with under Wally Lewis as well as Fatty Vorton.
Yeah.
Mate,
Graham Lowe as well.
Graham Lowe. Yeah. Who was probably the biggest influence through your Origin as an Origin coach?
Good question. I think obviously Fatty, just because we obviously won a series under Fatty, and what he did with as you said, a bunch of nobodies, like that was just really incredible. How he managed to get us in the shape in terms of confidence, and even the teamwork we had to put together with a brand new bunch of guys who hadn't played really together before at all. So I'll probably say Fatty, but Wally was also good as well. Like Wally was a smart, obviously a very smart football player, and he had good lessons for us. Probably didn't get the success as a coach that he got when he played on the field in Origin. But all the guys, like Artie Beetson had I was only young when Artie coached. Probably didn't take a lot in, because I was probably too busy just staring at the players that were around me and being in awe of those players. Even Graham Lowe had different things. So I've always had the view that basically you just got to learn off different people, Dean, and I've had great opportunities to learn off a lot of different, coaches and players, and you take little bits from each of those guys, and you just apply it. So yeah, they've all been good. Pretty
surreal to go from idolising Wally Lewis as a player to being in the same camp as him and replacing him when he went down injured, to then playing under him.
Yeah.
Matt, that's within probably a decade as well.
Yeah, I know. I still, you still, don't reflect back too often back in my footy career, but when you do sort of things like this, you do. It does take you on a journey back, and I'm really proud that these guys were my idols, and to get to actually play with them and play Origin with them, and it's just really just a dream come true. And I still pinch myself and go, how did I end up doing that? Like even playing for the Dragons, which was the club I went for when I was young. So I'd always gone for the Dragons since I was 7. So to actually get to play for the club and then to captain them for 6 years is just, it's just a pinch me moment, and I'm still, don't understand how it happened, but it did. So
let's jump back into the Dragons then. You took over as captain in '93, '94.
No, '94.
'94.
Yeah.
After 2 years in the grand finals as well. How was that like growing up supporting the Dragons to then captaining the club?
Yeah, really special moment when Brian Smith was the one who gave me the captaincy. Very special moment. I thought that I'd learned a lot off guys like Brian Johnson and Mick Beattie. They were great captains, as was Mick Potter as well, who I sort of took over from Mick. But yeah, no, I learned again. You learn a lot off them. But yeah, I remember getting announced as captain again. It's just one of those real, moments in your sporting career where you go, how did this happen? Like, I followed this club since I was 7, and now I'm getting to lead them out. So yeah, it's obviously a very big honour, and it wasn't an honour that I didn't take seriously. And I did 6 years, as captain. Last year was with Mary, Paul McGregor as well. We were joint captains, but overall 6 years, and I immensely enjoyed those 6 years. There were some hard times. Like I think my first year in '94 was when I was captain, and I think we lost a heap of games early on in that series and in that season, and then we didn't make the semis after being in 2 grand finals. So I probably was pretty hard on myself around that, and probably took it pretty hard around being the captain and feeling responsible for not being able to get the club up to the semis again, and probably had to learn a few lessons around that. I think personally around that, and just recognise that I can't do everything. Like it's a team sport, and I need support from the other guys. And I think I was quite lucky that I did sort of realise after '94 that I had a good bunch of leaders that were still around me, like Dave Barnhill and Scott Goulet, Graham Bradley. There was guys that I sort of learnt to lean on them a little bit more to help me, and I got some good lessons out of my first year around how to be a better person and a better captain.
It was obviously massive around 95, 96 with Super League looming. You obviously stayed loyal with the ARL and the Dragons. How was that within the team, and what were the discussions back then around Super League?
Yeah, really hard because, no one really knew what the truth was, because you're getting told by both sides this is the comp that's going to be the new comp going forward. So you just didn't know. So I don't blame anyone for whatever decision they made, because you just did not know what the right choice was. And the amount of times I went back and forth around am I stay with the ARL, is that the right thing, or is Super League going to be the future of where it's going? It was really hard as a player to know what to do, and I think at the end of the day we all probably just made decisions based on what was what was a financial incentive to go there. But I was obviously very loyal to the Dragons, and I wanted to stay at the Dragons, and I signed with the ARL, and that got me to stay with the Dragons. But at one point they were looking at changing and going to Super League. At one point that was a rumour mill in '95, but that ended up sort of not happening. They ended up staying with the ARL, but it was really hard. And when you look at the 1996 season, and 1996 season, it's probably my favourite year that I've had in my 12 years at the Dragons. Is when we turned up the training in January after the Christmas break. Our coach had left us, so Rod Reddy was our new coach for 1996, and he left to go to Super League and coach. I think he was coaching the Rams down in South Australia. And we had like 5 players at training that turned up the training because all the other players just ran to their Super League clubs or went to other clubs, and that was really hard. So we had our first training session in January. No players, no team, and we were all just looking at each other going, "What the hell is this year going to look like? Like, we haven't got any players." So eventually, St George then started taking some of the players through to court who had contracts. They went through court processes, and eventually all of the players were told to come back. We got a new coach in David Waite, who was really came in and did a super job for us. And as the players came back, David was very good. I think we were all very good at welcoming the players back. So we got the Mundines back, Nathan Brown came back, Noel Goldthorpe came back. Yep. We pretty much got all of the players eventually that were contracted to St George all came back to play in '96, except Gordy. Gordy was the only one that didn't come back, and you can probably do a story with Gordy one day. He can tell you the reasons why. But Gordy is a very strong around his principles, and there was some reasons why that he didn't come back to the club. So he sat that year out, which I think is a real shame, because that was ended up being a grand final year for us. And I've no doubt Gordy would have made a big difference in our team. So it's sort of sad in that regard. But yeah, that year, like to go from having no players at training to slowly getting them all back, then with a new coach, and I think we lost again. We lost our first 4 or 5 games, and then we just started to build, and we made it into the finals, and then we just had this amazing run in the semi-finals, and we just played so well. During that final series, and then ultimately we fell at the last hurdle again. But I remember when we beat North Sydney to get to the grand final, like I was just in tears. Me and Mark Bell, he was the winger on my side, and we just hugged each other and virtually cried, because we just couldn't believe where we came from at the start of the year. Yeah. To actually get to a grand final was just it was just amazing that we could actually do that. And to me, that's people often think that try is my favourite moment in my career, but winning through to that grand final is my favourite moment, just because I knew where we started from at the start of the year, and to get to where we got to was just a remarkable effort, and one that I'm really proud of, as leader of the team, but also with all the guys that I played with.
I'm guessing that first training session where there was only 4 guys, and you're already in your head, have I made the right decision? You're probably thinking, I haven't, right?
Yeah.
And then to go on to playing a grand final, you're going from one of the lows of probably your career to nearly the highest of highs.
Yeah, it was wild. Just that you didn't know. Again, everyone didn't really know what the right choice was, because no one really knew where it was going to end up. And then obviously, 97 was a disastrous year. I think for the game in general, because I think a lot of supporters walked away from the game when they split the 2 comps out, and we obviously lost a lot of players then. And again, we pretty much had a team that was made up of a lot of our under 21s and reserve grade guys. So we didn't have a great competitive year in '97, but again that was a split comp. So thank God they sort of got their act together, and the two comps came back together in '98. But in '97 was a really tough year for not just for the game, but for St George in particular, because a lot of our players just left us at the end of '96.
Then in '99, the merger, and as captain, you're the number one player for the St George Illawarra Dragons. How was that transition in the merge, and what was I suppose your role in all that as the captain of the team on the field?
Yeah, I think Paul McGregor and I, he was obviously came from the Illawarra side. Mary and I caught up pretty early on and said that if we want to make this work, you and I have to really make sure that we show that we get on well, and that we're working hard to make sure that we come together as a team. In saying that, it is really hard because you're trying to bring two teams together who have different cultures and different histories. So it was pretty hard. But I think Paul and I worked really hard to try and make sure that we demonstrated that we could make this work. And I'd like to think that as leaders of the club, we'd like to think that sort of flowed down. Obviously, David Wade and Andrew Farrar did a good job as well. So I think we just did everything we could to try and make the team feel connected. It was hard, but because half the team lived, up in the St George or the Cronulla, Sutherland Shire, the other half was living down at Wollongong. So, even after games, people would, go back home to families, and they'd want to go back home to their families. After training, we all sort of split and had to, drive back to our different regions. It was sort of hard around some of those logistics, but I think again, just that David and Andrew Farrar made it work. I think Mary and I made it work, and all the players all came in with open minds, and I think David and Andrew did a good job in making sure they got the balance right, and people didn't feel like they weren't being selected for whatever reasons. Yep. It just worked, and unfortunately I hurt my neck halfway through the year, so I pretty much retired mid-year. So I didn't get to play in that grand final, but I'm not sure I would have handled losing 4. 3 was hard enough to lose. The fourth one would have been a killer in my last year. But no, so I didn't get to play that last game, but it was obviously just a really sad game because we were ahead, and then to sort of to lose at the end, it was pretty tragic. And I remember going into the dressing room after the game. And I've obviously been in 3 losing dressing rooms, but that one was like the most morbid I've ever seen. They were just absolutely shattered that we lost that game. And but that's footy. You got to move on and get ready for the next year. And thankfully we got one in 2010. But since then it's been pretty scarce as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, like you missed '99. That was hard, and then the 3 previously that you lost. Was there do you think there was too much expectation of the old Dragons, the history of the club and the success that they had, the 50s and 60s, and from then on as well? Did that play a part in those grand final losses?
No, I don't think so. I think obviously you respect the history of the club. Illawarra guys probably wouldn't really have had that in '99 because they didn't come from the St George side. But I think. No, you always respect the history of what the club's achieved, and you always, obviously, we all want to win a grand final. That would have been good, but no, I don't think that ever weighed on us at all. I think that we just went out there to play footy, and unfortunately on the day we didn't play our best game. And I've always sort of felt '93 was the year that we should have won. '92, I sort of felt that we sort of got there and we went, how the hell did we get here? No one ever thought we'd make the top 8, let alone. Might have been top 5 then, sorry, but let alone get to the grand final. So I think '92 was a bit of, we've got there, how did we do it? And there's a bit of a, maybe we let down a little bit. But '93 was the year we should have won it, but unfortunately we lost Jason Stevens in the first minute. He had a compound fracture of his thumb. I did my knee, had a medial strain at about the 20-minute mark in the first half, so I was virtually running on one leg and ended up not playing much of the game. So we sort of had those couple of injuries that didn't help us at all. But '93 was the year that I think was the year that that was one that we should have won. 96 again, I think it could have gone either way. I think there was a dodgy referee call at some point during that game, which Manly scored off. But again, Manly were a really great team. They had, Bozo as coach, and they had some good players in Tubes and Steve Menzies, and they deserved to win that game. Again, might have been, given where we started at the start of the year, getting into the grand final might have been one of those ones where, you think, geez, we made it through to the grand final again, and maybe we didn't then take the next step, obviously. But yeah, it's tough losing them. There's no doubt about it. It's tough, and
I hate bringing it up, but
yeah,
we have to talk about them.
Yeah, no, it is tough, and it's the one thing I've obviously achieved a lot in the game, and that's the one thing that eluded me. Though I do try and claim that I won a Winfield Cup up in Brisbane before I came down to the Sydney comp, but no one says that I can count that. So
we'll count it.
You can count that for me. Yeah, thanks, Dean. But in saying that, you sort of, as you sort of, move on from the game, whilst you're still sad that you didn't get to, hold up the premiership trophy. I've obviously got great memories, of the club and my teammates, and to me, it's that bond of having with the club and with your teammates that you played with is more important than any silverware.
I remember hearing you mentioned Jason Stevens going off with his thumb, and he had it operated on pretty much straight away, and he was coming out of local anaesthesia, and he was watching the game was on, and the Dragons player won the Clive Churchill.
Yeah,
and he thought he won the grand final.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that story. Yeah, I think Brad Mackay. Brad Mackay won the Clive Churchill, but when Steve did that thumb, because I was a bit vocal on the field usually, and I gave him the biggest serve of my life. And he held his hand up like that, and I said, "Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry about that.
A bit ugly.
It was very ugly."
Yeah.
For Jace, but I did give him. He laughs about it now. I did give him a gobful because I said, "What are you doing on the ground?" Like,
yep.
There was a few other words included, but but I said, "What are you doing there? You you fat thing." I said to him. So then he held his thumb up. I said, "I know you're right, mate. You better go off."
Would have been a bit sick seeing that thumb the other way.
Yeah, it didn't look good.
Obviously, the Dragons' rich history with the 11 straight. That was a massive, one of the greatest things in not just rugby league, in sport. Is that the top in when we're talking about dynasties? Like you look at Panthers now, they've won things like the Canberra in the early 90s and Brisbane in the 90s as well. But are the Dragons still the top?
Well, I think just in terms of numbers, you've got to say yes. I mean, obviously, there's lots of changes now in terms of how the games, run. I think it's miraculous that, Penrith have been able to do what they've done, because obviously they've lost a lot of players, through obviously salary caps and that sort of stuff. But yeah, you look at Penrith whilst it's not 11 in a row like the Dragons, it's still a pretty bloody remarkable effort to be able to do what they've done. And even Melbourne have been on a high for a long time in terms of how they perform each year. So yeah, there's some remarkable teams, and you just got to take your hat off to them. Like obviously the goes right from the admin. Now I'm on the board of the Dragons, you sort of get a bit of a different perspective. But goes from the admin right down to the coaching staff, down to the players. You got to have everything lined up to work effectively to win a premiership, and those clubs have got it right.
Yep. In the probably got one of the biggest supporters as well in former Prime Minister John Howard, who used to be a former number one ticket holder. What was it like, having him roaming around the dressing sheds during and after games, and what was he in there a bit, or? Yeah,
he came in a fair bit, John. So I got he was probably. During my era, they used to have the grand final breakfasts where the Prime Minister would always come to that. So I'd met John a few times. He's a great, obviously big Dragon supporter. But no, he's a nice guy. But you see a lot of Dragons, just because of the success they had, in the early years. There's a lot of really influential, supporters that are out there, and you want to try and I think the Dragons now we're trying to connect more with those type of people. So we set up a little club called the Club 17, which we only had one on yesterday. We had a lunch on yesterday actually, where we had we have politicians come, we have people that have been very successful in the corporate world, other sporting codes. So we built a really nice little network now that we're we're trying to leverage and get these high profile people really showing their true colours of being Dragons fans. So yeah, it is good. Like one of my really good mates is Mark Taylor. So Mark Taylor, obviously the Australian cricket captain, and we're really close, Mark and I, because we met through a State of Origin game one night, and then became really good mates. And he's a really tragic Dragon supporter. Yeah. So there's sort of a lot of guys that can. He comes down and talks to the leaders sometimes at the Dragons. So there's lots of things that we can be doing around that sort of stuff to go back and provide support to the current group.
Yep. Speaking about the current group, is there sort of any advice or any tips or anything like that you'd be giving to them at the moment, or?
So don't get injured.
Yeah.
So that's been the hardest thing. Is we had obviously an awful run of injuries, but again, I think that we're rebuilding. I'm a big believer, and I think Shane Flanagan's got the ability to win a premiership with the Dragons, but we've got to put a good roster around him. So I think for us, the next couple of years is building that roster. I think I mentioned we just picked up Daniel Anderson from the Roosters. I think Daniel he said some words yesterday at the luncheon, and his words were very wise, and he's got some really good ideas around who we can target and what we have to do. So I think next year will be another improvement for us, but I think the year after will be the year that plenty of Dragons fans will be very supportive, because a lot of the young kids that we're blooding now are going to get a lot of benefit from this year and then next year, and I really reckon the year after is going to be one that we're going to be pretty formidable.
As a Dragons fan, that's what I want to hear as well. So thank you.
No problems.
We want to jump on some teammates.
Yep.
Gordy Tallis.
Yep.
The Raging Bull.
Yep.
How is he, you played early on in your career with him and then against him later on in your career. Any good stories, or what can you say about Gordy?
Oh, he's a ferocious beast, Gordy. I remember when we used to watch him play in the 21s, and people kept talking about this kid that's playing in the 21s, and I purposely went down. I never would have usually gone probably to a game early before, first grade game, but used to go down just to watch Gordy. He used to tear him apart. Like, he was just a phenomenal right back then. And then, it was a real pleasure to get to play with him at the Dragons. And then obviously I got to play, I think maybe one game or two games with Gordy in Origin. But yeah, he's just an incredible player. And obviously very sad that he left us. I think he left us. I blame my neighbour, Phil Gould, because Phil Gould said something about him, or he thought that Phil said that he wasn't a consistent first grader. So then Gordy got the shits and then went up to the Broncos with Super League. So that was a real loss for the Dragons, because obviously he played his best years at the Broncos. But yeah, he's a super guy. I still see him every now and again now. We'll go and catch up for a dinner. And he's a great fella, but one that I would have liked to have him play in the 99 grand final for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
The 96 grand final.
You mentioned Phil Gould being a neighbour. He said 6 weeks during the year you turn into a pumpkin head and you replace that Australian flag with a Queenslander one, which I noticed it's not out there at the moment.
No, I haven't done it yet because it's been a bit busy with stuff, but I have to put it up shortly. I also, when he carries on about, off goes our head, on goes the pumpkin. After we won the series, I went and bought a pumpkin and I put it out at his front door. So I signed. I said, "Go Queensland." And I signed it, Mark Coyne, and left it at his front door. So I haven't seen him since then. So maybe he's not talking to me still.
I don't think he made pumpkin soup out of it anyway.
I don't reckon he did either.
Another teammate, Chock Mundine.
Yeah.
Obviously, very outspoken, very confident, but a great player for the Dragons in the 90s. How was it like playing with Chock?
Yeah, unreal. He was one of the most talented kids that I'd come across and that I played with. He could do anything, Anthony. I mean, he could pick up a basketball and do whatever he wants. I think we had a ping pong table at one point. He flogged everyone at ping pong. He was just one of those kids that was just gifted athletically, Anthony. But I've always found him people find this really weird, but always a very humble and respectful person. Obviously, he's a very proud Indigenous person, and he is outspoken at times. And obviously, when you go into boxing, you've got to be pretty outspoken anyway to attract audiences. But the Anthony that I played with and trained with and and got to know, was always very respectful, and I've got an enormous amount of time for Anthony, and you know what he tries to do to improve, get better outcomes for his people.
What about in '96 when he made the jump to Super League and the Broncos? A bit of a bombshell for the Dragons, and you were captain at the time. How did you take that, and how did you, I suppose, handle it with the current squad?
Yeah, it was disappointing because, as I said, you know, '96 was a super year for us at the end after a bad start. '97 was a disastrous year for us. So yeah, obviously we lost a lot of good players. It wasn't just Anthony; it was a lot of other players. But yeah, he was the face of you know, one of the faces of the club, no doubt. And to lose him to the Broncos was really disappointing. And yeah, we were all disappointed around that because we knew what a great talent he was. But you know, that's what happened. You know, during that time, it was really hard as a player to know what the right decisions were, and obviously there was lots of money floating around. So you know, Anthony did what was best for Anthony and his family, and you can't knock anyone for doing what's best for their families.
Nathan Blacklock, one of the freaks of our game, and especially in that '99 grand final, scoring that long range try where you almost thought it was over at that point. But what was it like playing with Nathan?
Unreal, yeah. He was a super player. I had a lot of years with. I played Chucky Heron was on my right side. I had Ricky Walford for a lot of years, so probably Ricky, me and him played together a lot, and you know, we scored a lot of tries together, Rick and I. So Rick's probably my favourite. He's probably my favourite winger, closely followed by Chook and Tingo or Nathan Blacklock. But Nathan was again a freakish talent. He was an amazing footwork that he had, and great speed, and a real nice person as well. You know, always looking to improve himself. But yeah, I got a lot of time for Nathan Blacklock. Unfortunately, I haven't seen him at many reunions the last few years, but hopefully we can get him down come soon.
You spoke about Mary McGregor as well, and that combination of Dragons player and Steelers player when the merger happened. Another guy, Rod Wishart, great player for New South Wales and Australia as well. What was I playing with Rod in that year of '99? Yeah,
it was good. Obviously, I knew Rod. We toured together in the '95 Kangaroo Tour, so I knew Rod from that tour. So we had a good relationship. Most of those guys that I toured with in '95, I had good relationships with all of those guys. So it was good to play. Obviously, you know, we knew how good a player he was. Wishy, I don't know why we haven't got his son playing for us. I have to have a go at Wishy next time I see him, because he should definitely be playing for the Dragons instead of Storm. But no, Wishy was a great player. You know, obviously he was a good goal kicker, but yeah, he was tough and he worked hard. Always had issues with his hamstrings, so he's always always missed it. I reckon he just didn't want to train, so he always said he had a bad hamstring. But no, good fella. You know, you go to any club, or even like our rep games, Queenslander or Australia, like they're all good people. Like everyone's a good person. Obviously, when you go out and play against someone, like you hate each other while you're on the field. But I've rarely met anyone that I haven't liked that I played football with or against. Like they're just good people, are good people, and it's a real pleasure that you can interact with those people for a part of your life and part of their life, and then obviously, you know, you sort of grow apart as you finish the game and you get other priorities in life. But you know, you can go back to I went to my first Kangaroo reunion last year, or maybe it was this year, and it was this year, and it was just like, I don't know why I hadn't been to any other ones before, because it was such a nice feeling to go back in and see these players that I hadn't seen for a long time. So I'm going to make sure I go to a lot more now, because it's just good. It's good seeing people, and you feel like you're just back where you were when you were playing with them.
You played a few games for the Kangaroos while we're on them. Any memories of the tours and stuff in the mid-90s?
Yeah, we had some sort of funny tours. We did one, because again, it was sort of when I made my Kangaroo debut, you know, during the Super League war. So, you know, I think I was pretty lucky to get in, because there was plenty of probably other centres that might have got picked before me that were in the Super League side. But no, we did a tour to Papua New Guinea, which was pretty wild. So that was a pretty wild place. We were in a compound, and you know, when we played the game up there against PNG, there's people, you know, hanging from trees and all sorts of stuff. So it was it was a wild visit to PNG. And then I did the '95 World Cup, which was pretty amazing. Got to play at Wembley twice over there, which was incredible. You know, again, we had a good opportunity to meet people I hadn't played with before. Like, you know, Terry Hill, who unfortunately has passed away now, but Terry and I were the two centres, so we became friends through that. Other guys that like Mary was over there, and just sort of helped you cement different relationships, because generally you hated the Blues generally, but when you're playing for your country you sort of forget about that. But yeah, it was really nice to sort of meet those guys in a different environment, which was good. So yeah, it was enjoyable.
So you're on the board now with the Dragons. Massive influence while you were playing was Peter Doust.
Yep.
What did you take from Peter when he was involved with the Dragons to what you're doing now?
I didn't have a lot to do with Peter, to tell you the truth. So Jeff Carr was the one that was CEO predominantly when I played most of my career. And then Brian Johnson was CEO after that, the former centre. I probably just was right at the back end of maybe had 1 year under Peter potentially, but I've obviously known Peter for a while, just because he's a true Dragons man, and I've been involved with the club since I stopped playing. But no, Peter's good. The whole board's been really positive. We're all very keen to try and get the Dragons back on the map, the premiership map, and we're all working hard to do that. So I think the real key is around getting Shane the right roster, and that's what we're working heavily on at the moment. And obviously we still want to try and improve a lot of other things that happen off the field as well. And we've just got a new CEO, Tim Wattsford, who's joined recently. So I think there's really some positive things happening at the moment. Again, I think that we're in a building phase at the moment, and we'll keep building. But I reckon we'll have another better year next year. But I think the year after will be the year that we can really push for a premiership again. So touch wood, that's how it plays out.
Post footy, you were involved with the judiciary panel.
Yep.
For a few years.
Yep.
How was that, like going from playing, and what sort of, I suppose, influence did you have in those decisions?
Yeah, you have a big influence because you're on a panel with 3 other players, and basically it's like going to court really. You basically hear the defence argue, you hear the prosecution argue about why the player should be found guilty, and then you go away in a room and you think about what the right decision is, and you make the decision. So yeah, I think it was a good process. We didn't try to make it like a full-on courtroom stuff, but yeah, I think I did about 3 or 4 years of that with some other players who are on the panel, and you rotate. We have different players. I did a lot with Ian Roberts. Ian Roberts and I seem to do a bit together. Mal Cochrane as well, Manly guy. He's a great fella. So yeah, obviously the benefit of going into to judgment is that we've all played the game. So we recognise that it's a fast-moving game, and you do things that sometimes you don't mean to do, but it does happen because the game's so quick. So I always thought that we always made sure we listened to the evidence and made the decisions. So yeah, I did that for a while, and then I was on the education. I was chairman of the Education and Welfare Committee for a lot of years. I think I did that for nearly 8 or 9 years for the NRL. It was a combination of the NRL and the RLPA, and I did that for a lot of years. And then eventually I didn't do that anymore. And I've just recently gone on to a new committee for the NRL and the Players Association to do work health and safety. So yes, I'm sort of I've had a bit of a break from footy, but I'm sort of going back in and doing a bit through that work health and safety committee, and then being on the Dragons board. So it's nice to be back involved.
Some of the stuff when you were with the NRL and RLPA was education, like you said, and it was 84% of players while you were there went on to do further education. I think it was 60%. It was be the first in their family to actually get an education like that. Must be something you're very proud of.
Very proud of that. Yeah, we did a lot of energy, and to be fair, the NRL have been quite good in terms of investing. They put a lot of funds to having education managers now at all the clubs. I think they have maybe even 2 or 3 of people helping the players map out. It's always been a really hard thing to do because when you're a young guy playing NRL, you think that you're bulletproof. You don't need to think about what's in the future, but realistically, the average career is about maybe 3 years or something like that, maybe a bit less than that. So technically, if you're an average person, you're going to be out of the game in 3 years. And what do you do then? Like, your whole life's been channeled towards becoming an NRL player, and all of a sudden, all that's taken away from you. You go, what do I do now? So education is really important. And it's not just education, it's also a little bit about getting some work experience. So I think the clubs are quite good at encouraging players now to to get educated, but then also how can they start getting a bit of work experience, because you sort of need that as well. It's fine to have a degree, but you need to also demonstrate that you've actually worked, somewhere as well. But again, it is hard telling a young kid you got to do that, because I think the whole world's just going to be footy ahead of them, and even playing 12 years, like, it goes really quick, and then at the end of 12 years, which I did, it was like, even I was struggling to think what I was going to do when I first finished, and you got to sort of navigate through. Not only you're not playing your sport anymore, but now I'm in a whole new world, and where do I head to now? So it's a challenge.
Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure having a chat about your whole career and what you're doing now as well. Like I said, I'm a Dragons nuffy. I'd be remiss if I didn't pull up a couple of things. Now, back in the mid-90s, you were part of only 5 players to have a gold card in the 94 collector's kit. I've had this since I was a kid, so I'd love if I could get that signed by you. But what was, I think the players we mentioned were Mal Meninga, Ricky Stewart, Brad Mackay and Steve Walters. So some fantastic company there. What do you remember about those days of the cards and the big stories about them?
I remember signing a lot of them when they came out, the cards, but I never. That's the first time I've heard that. I knew that there was a gold card of me, but I never knew there was only 5 of those gold cards. So I'm pretty impressed with myself, actually, that I made one of those gold cards. But they're good. I mean, I still go to games now, and I turn up at a game at Cogra Oval, and there's people there with footy cards that want me to sign it. So it's good. It's good memorabilia, and so I don't mind. I'm always getting asked to sign different things, and I think that's the real one of the real good things of the game is that there's all this memorabilia that you can make someone happy by signing it for them. So no problem signing it for you.
Or you always got to take an extra 10-15 minutes when you're going to games just to stop, and it's always good to be stopped by people still.
No,
right?
It's nice. 100%. It's good to be.
And one of the other things I've got is back in you actually scored the very first try in Adelaide in a rugby league match.
I did,
so in '91,
Yep.
And you had a deal with the South Australian government there to play Dragons to play games there every year. What was that like playing in front of South Australian crowds and on Adelaide and in front of people that wouldn't have seen rugby league regularly?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I'm trying to think who the game was against. We played a couple of games there. One was against the Broncos. I'm not sure if it. I don't think it was that game that we played. I can't remember who the game was, but we definitely played a Broncos game there. But yeah, it was good. I mean, it's a different stadium, like Adelaide Cricket Ground. Obviously, again, you're on a cricket ground, so you feel a bit lost out on cricket grounds because they're so big, and you sort of obviously there's a field in the middle of it, but it does feel a bit weird that the crowd's sort of way back, not really on top of you like the Suncorp Stadium. But no, it was a great experience, and yeah, you're right. I did remember that I did score the first try down at the cricket ground, so that's pretty cool.
Nice little bit of history.
Yeah.
And like I said,
Wes,
got some
Wes. We played Wes. Yeah.
Got some autographs from that game. I haven't got yours.
Okay, well there you go.
So I'll get you to sign that if that's all right as well. But like I said, been an absolute pleasure catching up, and I wish you all the best in the future as well.
Great, thanks, Dean.